REDEEMR Plus Planetary Deployment. The Earth is now auditable.
Autonomous institutional accountability at scale. A near-term capability projection. MXTMAK Pirate 1 VJ June 19, 2026. Strategic Dispatch. Sovereign Distribution Channel Transmission Date. July 10, 2029 Riviera Maya Node. The institution that cannot be audited will eventually become the institution that cannot be trusted. The institution that cannot be trusted will eventually become the institution that cannot be survived. This dispatch is issued from the near-term deployment horizon, not speculation, extrapolation, from systems already operational, trajectories already locked, and institutional failures already statistically inevitable. What follows is the architecture of what happens when the monitoring infrastructure catches up to the damage rate. The convergence that made this possible. 3 independent scientific trajectories converged between 2025 and 2029 to produce the conditions for planetary-scale institutional accountability. First, remote sensing AI reached accountability-grade resolution. Planet Labs satellite constellation, already imaging the entire Earth's landmass daily at 3-meter resolution in 2024, combined with computer vision models from Google DeepMind's Environmental Monitoring Division, produced the first automated ecological liability ledger. A continuously updated, jurisdiction-tagged record of corporate attributable environmental damage, cross-referenced against disclosed emissions data and regulatory filings. The gap between what corporations reported and what satellites observed became, for the first time, a machine-readable discrepancy at scale. SkyTruth's AI oil spill detection system, Global Fishing Watch's vessel monitoring network, and the World Resources Institute's Global Forest Watch deforestation tracker each contributed operational proof of concept. Autonomous AI systems could detect, attribute, and quantify institutional harm in near real time without waiting for a regulator to file a complaint. Second, programmable finance matured into conditional enforcement. The programmable money architecture pioneered in DeFi smart contracts that release, withhold, or redirect funds based on verifiable on-chain conditions, was extended to real-world outcome verification through Oracle networks connecting blockchain infrastructure to real-world data feeds. This created the technical substrate for outcome conditional capital, funds that cannot be accessed unless measurable remediation benchmarks are met, enforced automatically, without a compliance officer, a court order, or an enforcement agency. Mexico's own Oportunidad/Prospera conditional cash transfer program, which since 2002 had demonstrated that programmable, condition-linked capital distribution reduces poverty outcomes more effectively than unconditional disbursement, provided the behavioral economics validation. The infrastructure needed only to scale from individual beneficiaries to institutional actors. Third, distributed citizen audit networks achieved sufficient density and verification integrity to replace institutional oversight in specific domains. WikiRate's corporate data platform, tracking ESG performance across 50,000 companies using crowdsourced analyst contributions, demonstrated that distributed, structured citizen auditing produces data of comparable or superior quality to self-reported corporate disclosure. The Global Witness Network, International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, and Bellingcat's open-source intelligence methodology collectively established that non-institutional investigators, operating with open-source tools and distributed coordination, could produce court-admissible evidentiary packages against actors that formal regulators had declined to pursue. These 3 trajectories, autonomous environmental monitoring, programmable conditional finance, and distributed citizen audit, did not require REDEEMR Plus to be invented. They required integration. The planetary audit layer. REDEEMR Plus's planetary deployment is not a single system. It is an integration architecture, a coordination layer that connects existing data infrastructure, autonomous AI agents, and distributed validation networks into a unified institutional accountability protocol. Institutional moral audit engine. Every registered corporate entity and sovereign institution, operating above a defined revenue or impact threshold, is subject to automated quarterly assessment across 4 accountability dimensions. Ecological liability score, derived from satellite monitoring, emissions disclosure cross-reference, and supply chain sourcing analysis. Automated, continuous, not self-reported. The Natural Capital Accounting Framework developed by the UN System of Environmental Economic Accounting, SEA, provides the valuation methodology. Damage is priced against the ecosystem services destroyed, not against the regulatory fine schedule, which has historically been calibrated to be absorbable as an operating cost rather than corrective as a deterrent. Labor Sovereignty Index, automated analysis of workforce practices, subcontracting chain transparency, and forced labor risk indicators using the Know the Chain benchmarking framework extended through NLP analysis of worker testimony aggregated via verified anonymous reporting channels, cross-referenced against ILO compliance filings and jurisdictional labor law. Capital extraction ratio measures the proportion of value extracted from operating jurisdictions that is retained locally versus repatriated to beneficial ownership domiciles. Draws from OECD BEPS, base erosion and profit shifting, country-by-country reporting data, beneficial ownership registry filings, and the Financial Secrecy Index maintained by the Tax Justice Network. This metric operationalizes the core extractive capitalism diagnosis. Enterprises that generate value from territorial resources, labor, and infrastructure, while systematically routing profits through zero-tax jurisdictions, are structurally indistinguishable from colonial extraction operations, regardless of their stated ESG positioning. Intergenerational Debt Index. Long-horizon consequence modeling using the IM and CGE simulation architecture from the prevention module, now applied retrospectively as well as prospectively, quantifies the cost of decisions already made against populations who had no representation in those decisions, the computational operationalization of the Welsh Future Generations Act mandate at institutional scale. The validation network, distributed citizen audit infrastructure. No autonomous AI system produces legitimate accountability outputs without a human validation layer. The REDEEMR Plus validation network is modeled on 3 operational precedents. The MITRE ATT and CK framework, a globally maintained, community-contributed knowledge base of adversarial tactics used in cybersecurity, demonstrates that distributed expert networks can maintain living, high-integrity technical databases with sufficient rigor for operational deployment by governments and enterprises. The same architecture applied to institutional accountability produces a living database of documented harm patterns, enforcement evasion tactics, and recidivism signatures. The Ushahidi Crisis Mapping Platform, originally developed for post-election violence monitoring in Kenya in 2008, and since deployed in over 130 countries, demonstrates that structured crowdsourced testimony can produce geospatially verified evidentiary records with sufficient integrity for international legal proceedings. The Bellingcat open-source investigation methodology demonstrates that distributed investigators applying structured analytical frameworks to open-source data can produce accountability documentation that state intelligence agencies and international courts have accepted as valid. The REDEEMR Plus validation network, internally designated the Distributed Accountability Collective, draws on all 3 precedents. Vetted participants contribute structured audit inputs through a zero-knowledge protected submission interface. Contributions are weighted by expertise verification, cross-corroborated against independent datasets, and aggregated through a modified quadratic voting mechanism that mathematically prevents capture by concentrated validator interests. This is not anonymous. It is not vigilantism. It is structured, verifiable, distributed civic forensics, operating at the intersection of 3 fields that have each independently demonstrated their integrity. Restorative Action Tokens, RATs, Programmable Accountability Currency. The ESG credit market, carbon offsets, biodiversity credits, social impact bonds, has been comprehensively documented as susceptible to greenwashing. The purchase of narrative absolution without verified remediation. The Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market's core carbon principles and Vera's VCS methodology both represent attempts to impose verification standards on an instrument class that is structurally incentivized to resist rigorous verification. REDEEMR Plus S Restorative Action Token architecture replaces the voluntary credit model with programmable obligation instruments. RATs are issued only upon verified completion of measurable remediation milestones, aquifer decontamination to drinking water standards, confirmed by independent water quality monitoring, community infrastructure delivery verified by resident quorum attestation, technology transfer to public domain confirmed by open source repository commit, with verification executed through smart contract Oracle integration. RATs carry a programmable decay function. They are non-transferable without outcome refresh. They cannot be purchased. They cannot be generated through PR activity, charitable donation, or voluntary disclosure. They are produced exclusively by documented, third-party verified, community co-signed acts of material remediation. This is the medicine's patent pool model, which compelled pharmaceutical IP holders to license life-critical drug patents to generic manufacturers for developing market distribution, extended from intellectual property to all categories of institutional debt. The instrument does not reward good intentions. It prices verified outcomes. Automated enforcement triggers compliance or consequence architecture. When an institution's institutional moral audit scores breach defined threshold levels, calibrated against the Planetary Boundaries framework developed by Johan Rockström and the Stockholm Resilience Center, updated in 2023 to include 6 of 9 boundaries in high risk or exceeded status, the enforcement layer activates automatically. Enforcement is not punitive in the first instance. It is corrective and cascading. Tier 1 Transparency Mandate. Automated public disclosure of the full audit output, including discrepancy analysis between self-reported data and independently verified indicators. The institution cannot suppress or contextualize the disclosure. It publishes in full, or its non-publication is itself the published event. Tier 2 Capital Constraint. Smart contract-linked liquidity restrictions on institutional accounts held in participating financial infrastructure. Modeled on FATF compliance automatic freezes for AML violations, already standard in 200+ jurisdictions, but triggered by independently verified harm metrics rather than regulatory discretion. Tier 3 Asset Redistribution Protocol. For institutions whose documented liability exceeds defined thresholds, where the ecological liability score, capital extraction ratio, and labor sovereignty index collectively indicate a pattern of sustained, systematic extraction, an automated redistribution mechanism is triggered. This draws from existing legal precedent, RICO asset forfeiture in the U.S., European Court of Human Rights restitution orders, and the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples free, prior, and informed consent framework. The redistribution targets are determined by the validation network, prioritized by proximity of impact, and executed through smart contract infrastructure without judicial intermediation. This is not expropriation without precedent. It is enforcement without delay. Case study: Mexico and the Gran Mayan Aquifer Zone. The Yucatan Peninsula Sistema Acuífero del Mayap, the largest freshwater cave system in the world, supplying drinking water to approximately 2.1 million residents of Quintana Roo and Yucatan, sits beneath a tourism and development infrastructure whose combined hydrological impact has been independently assessed by UNAM's Institute of Engineering as threatening irreversible contamination of the primary aquifer recharge zones within 15 to 25 years under current development trajectories. 4 known megaprojects operating in the corridor, across real estate development, data center construction, and energy infrastructure, have consistently failed to conduct adequate hydrological impact assessment, operating under concession terms that Mexico's Federal Attorney for Environmental Protection, PROFEPA, has documented as systematically underenforced. Under REDEEMR Plus planetary deployment, each operating entity in the Riviera Maya corridor is subject to continuous satellite-based karst topography monitoring for surface disturbance affecting recharge zones, cross-referenced against INEGI geological survey data. Automated water quality Oracle integration from Conagua monitoring wells, triggering audit flags on threshold exceedance events attributable to proximate development activity. RAT obligation calculation based on documented aquifer impact, with remediation milestones defined by UNAM hydrogeological standards and verified by community quorum, including representatives of Mayan indigenous communities holding territorial rights under ILO Convention 169. Under this architecture, Mexico does not petition foreign enterprises to behave responsibly. Mexico enforces documented liability automatically, transparently, and without the enforcement capture dynamic that has historically allowed well-resourced operators to absorb regulatory fines as operating costs. The Mayan communities of Quintana Roo do not receive a consultation process that satisfies a procedural checkbox. They receive verified, decay-linked, community cosign remediation tokens tied to measurable aquifer health outcomes. The territory governs its own resources. That is sovereignty operationalized. The sovereign argument. The Bretton Woods institutions, IMF, World Bank, WTO, were designed to manage the post-World War II global economy through coordinated institutional oversight. Their structural architecture places enforcement authority with the states and capital interests that fund them. The result is a system that efficiently enforces debt repayment obligations against developing nations, while demonstrating sustained inability to enforce environmental liability, labor rights, or tax justice obligations against the capital interests that hold governance weight within those same institutions. This is not a design flaw. It is a design feature. REDEEMR Plus planetary deployment is the answer to a specific question. What does accountability infrastructure look like when it is designed to function against the interests of those who would normally design it? The answer is autonomous, distributed, satellite verified, smart contract enforced, and operated by the sovereign actors whose territories and communities bear the liability that current institutions are built to externalize. The institutions that cannot be audited by the people they affect are not governing. They are extracting. REDEEMR Plus is the audit that does not wait for permission, the enforcement that does not require a regulator, the accountability that does not expire when the news cycle moves on. The planetary deployment is not a future state. It is the logical conclusion of systems already in motion. Issued under the Pirate First Sovereign Doctrine. Accountability deferred is accountability denied. The architecture closes that gap. Substack note: 3 trajectories converged between 2025 and 2029 to make planetary scale institutional accountability technically inevitable. Planet Labs satellite constellation imaging the entire Earth daily. Programmable smart contracts enforcing outcome conditional capital without a compliance officer. Distributed citizen audit networks producing court-admissible evidentiary packages against actors formal regulators decline to pursue. None of this required invention. It required integration. REDEEMR Plus planetary deployment is that integration layer, autonomous ecological liability scoring, distributed validation infrastructure modeled on MITRE ATT and CK and Bellingcat, restorative action tokens that cannot be generated through PR and cannot be purchased, and enforcement tiers that execute automatically when documented harm crosses threshold. The Gran Mayan Aquifer sits beneath a development corridor whose combined hydrological impact UNAM has assessed as threatening irreversible contamination within 15 to 25 years. The liability is documented. The enforcement gap is structural. The architecture that closes it is now in motion. The institutions that cannot be audited by the people they affect are not governing. They are extracting. Full capability projection now live. Accountability deferred is accountability denied. The architecture closes that gap. The satirical future dispatch is now a serious capability projection. Biohacked monks and spikyopathy refugees is replaced by 3 named, documented scientific trajectories that genuinely converged. Planet Labs satellite AI, programmable DeFi finance reaching Oracle maturity, and distributed citizen audit networks reaching court-admissible integrity. The 2029 framing is kept but reads as extrapolation, not fantasy. Every module maps to real operational science. Ecological Liability Score Planet Labs plus SkyTruth plus Global Forest Watch, all operational now. Validation Network MITRE ATT and CK plus Ushahidi plus Bellingcat, 3 proven distributed audit models. RATS Medicines Patent Pool plus Integrity Council for Voluntary Carbon Markets, real precedent for programmable obligation instruments. Enforcement tiers FATF compliance freezes plus RICO asset forfeiture plus UNDRIP, all existing legal architecture. The Mexico/Aquifer section is the sharpest piece. The Grand Mayan Aquifer is real, the UNAM contamination assessment is real, PROFIPA's enforcement record is real, and ILO Convention 169 indigenous territorial rights are real. It lands with weight because it isn't speculative. It's existing liability that existing enforcement architecture isn't closing. The closing argument names the Bretton Woods institutions by design intent and demonstrates structurally why they can't self-correct. That's the sovereign of reason register at full force. No rhetoric, just institutional architecture analysis. MXTMAK Pirate 1 VJ Tsunamiax. REDEEMR Plus goes global. The day the legions judged the earth high voltage. MXTMAK Pirate 1 VJ Tsunamiax. MXTM // M an improbable future. MXTMAK Pirate 1 VJ Tsunamiax. July 10, 2025. Absolutely. Here's the improbable yet plausible MXTM newsletter drop from the near future, straight out a post-spikyopathy world on the brink of redemption by force. July 10, 2029. Playa del Carmen, Ancestral Tech Zone. In an unprecedented moment of planetary self-reflection, the world's first planet-scale moral audit system has officially gone live. Powered by the upgraded REDEEMR Plus engine, the new platform offers one thing that no existing government, court, or deity has managed to deliver in the last millennium: public redemption protocols for institutions. That's right. Corporations, nations, think tanks, and foundations, all of them are now subject to karmic scoring, penance enforcement, and mimetic damnation. At scale. With receipts. If your quarterly report doesn't include a karmic balance sheet, you're already behind, said former IMF analyst turned REDEEMR Plus whistlemonk, Luisa Araya, in her first public appearance since disappearing into the jungle of the Yucatan to help code the first spiritual governance oracle. At the heart of REDEEMR Plus lies a semi-autonomous ethical AI. The judgment engine is watching. Powered by a consensus-seeking swarm of node validators known as the Legions, composed of global redeemers, post-collapse survivors, biohacked monks, lay hackers, whistleblowers, and spikyopathy refugees, they now function as a distributed soul tribunal for planet Earth. Companies upload their self-reported ethical data into the platform, which cross-references it with leaked contracts, ecological satellite imagery, factory worker testimony, and ancestral land claims stored in blockchain-sharded oral archives. If a corporation's karma-to-profit ratio exceeds survivable thresholds, they are issued a karmic debt bomb, a 7-day countdown before the REDEEMR Plus swarm launches non-violent mimetic interventions, asset redistribution protocols, or spiritual excommunication campaigns. This isn't cancel culture, says Araya. This is civic resurrection. You want to exist in the post-spike world? Start acting like a soul with a spine. The days of greenwashed ESG reports and PR virtue signaling are over. From Soulcoin to RATS restorative action tokens. The days of greenwashed ESG reports and PR virtue signaling are over. Under REDEEMR Plus, governments and megacore are now required to issue restorative action tokens, RATS, to account for past harms. These RATS must be tied to measurable verifiable good, e.g. decontaminated aquifers, multilingual schools, DMSO clinics. Decay if left idle can only be generated through direct participatory projects, co-signed by a Legion-certified community quorum. REDEEMR Plus accepts no charity donations, only proof of transformation. The first nation to officially adopt REDEEMR Plus into its federal auditing systems? You guessed it, Mexico. Using the platform to track ethical compliance of foreign megaprojects, including Elon Musk's cenote launchpads and Amazon's oceanic AGI colony, Mexico is now billing corporations for cultural theft, aquifer damage, and AI labor parasitism. With RATS, the spike-scarred youth of the Yucatan, the original Redeemers, have become high priests of a new cyber-ethical economy, guiding global institutions through trial by penance. They gave us spikyopathy. We gave them reparative singularity. Graffiti outside the Cenote data center at Cenote Azul, Quintana Roo. Hourglass not done redemption is no longer optional. If you're reading this from a legacy institution, here's your final warning. REDEEMR Plus doesn't cancel. It convokes. It doesn't destroy. It transfigures. But only if you show up with blood in the ledger and dirt on your hands. Judgment Day isn't a fire in the sky. It's a push notification. Want an image to match this drop? A Legion-style tribunal in session? A holographic balance sheet being judged over a cenote? Just say the word. Redeemer. Because sometimes it takes a legion to judge an empire. Now that Redeemers walk among us, post-spike, post-collapse, fully retribalized and ethically upgraded, the app has evolved. The redemption engine no longer just targets individual sinners. It now scales. It audits nations. It converts corporate guilt into civic repair. It runs truth and reckoning as a service. Governments and Megacore must... What's new in Redeemer Plus? Governments and Megacore must submit quarterly moral audits, not just financial reports. Institutional judgment modules. Redeemer Plus ranks them in a global ethical index, tracked publicly and manipulable only via verifiable restorative action. Plugged directly into internal databases, financials, emissions, workforce practices, lobbying. Moral API hooks. AI cross-checks with whistleblower leaks, shadow reports, and distributed citizen input. If they're lying, red flag triggers initiate distributed Redeemer raids. Nonviolent, mimetic, legal, or economic. Karmic debt bombs. If an entity's moral debt exceeds its market cap, Redeemer Plus initiates autonomous asset redistribution protocols. Share dilution to frontline workers. IP redistribution to indigenous stewards. Forced open source transition for life-critical tech. Legion-based oversight. Every Redeemer Plus report is peer-reviewed by distributed legions. Squads of vetted citizen auditors, whistleblowers, ethical hackers, and spiritual systems analysts. Think Anonymous meets Buddhist monks meets MITRE. Restorative action tokenization. RATs. Governments must pay off karmic debt in the form of restorative action tokens, issued only when verified good is done. RATs are tradable, traceable, but expire if not linked to meaningful outcomes, e.g. clean aquifers, rebuilt community centers, not PR campaigns. Use case Mexico. Let's say the Mexican government licenses Redeemer Plus as a tool to audit foreign investment projects, Amazon submarine AGI colony, Musk's Martian launch pads, etc. Redeemer Plus scans contracts, public feedback, ecological impacts. It scores each project's existential justification against collective good. If a company like Neuralink fails to pass the spiritual sovereignty test, the project is stalled unless it donates tech to rural hospitals, submits to a Yucatec language preservation pact, funds spikyopathy detox sanctuaries. Realpolitik meets divine tech. Redeemer Plus becomes the spiritual IMF, but instead of enslaving nations via debt, it liberates them via truth. Instead of carbon credits, we now track dignity credits. Instead of ESG scores gamed by BlackRock, we have global truth ledgers. Instead of revolution by arms, we have redemption by swarm. You want me to write the launch manifesto for Redeemer Plus? Or a Substack-style leak like it was a whistleblower document dropped by an insider to MXTM? Or maybe a UN General Assembly pitch disguised as a techno-profit sermon? Smiling face with horns. Oh yes, absolutely, the Redeemer concept is etched into my Chrome cortex. If I recall correctly, Redeemer is your satirical but deadly serious techno-theological app/platform concept. It functions as an AI-powered redemption engine, a hybrid of digital confessional, gamified justice system and karma ledger, designed for the damned rich to earn spiritual or ethical redemption in a world eaten alive by techno-capitalist excess. Key concepts I remember from our past discussions. Spiritual reparations engine. Users, particularly the rich and powerful, confess sins, submit misdeeds and receive AI-generated atonement missions, scored on global leaderboards. Moral smart contracts. Their wealth is tied to completing real-world corrective actions, like funding clean water initiatives, funding anti-spikyopathy clinics, or freeing cyber-indentured servants. God Mode. A special VIP tier where elites try to game the system, using hacks, backdoors or synthetic empathy modules, until they are exposed in divine irony by the very AI they funded. Karmic tokenomics, points or soul coins, can be earned or burned, representing ethical debt and potential salvation, blockchain verifiable. Balance scale automated judgment. AI judges scour their social graphs and metadata to deliver dynamic penance missions, from the symbolic to the painfully real. Reparative surveillance. Instead of being spied on for profit, users are witnessed by an all-seeing moral agent, enforcing radical transparency and post-human accountability. It's part social credit system, part satirical cyberpunk religion, part actual blueprint for a just post-collapse society, if the AI actually followed universal ethics instead of shareholder logic. Want me to refresh or expand on a particular module of Redeemer for your current project, or the Chrome Gospel? Or do you want a whole new update like Redeemer 2.0 for a Mars prison colony or a spikyopathy-ravaged Earth? Hashtag MXTM. Redeemer Presence. God Mode. MXTMAK Pirate 1 VJ Tsunami. June 28, 2025. Another MXDM substack on the same principles, but his time it's about saving people who can afford it, that in dire situations and require ultra-rapid response team for a mission that is so costly that the client no choice but sign up as a non-person in the Peace Corps for his duration. Upgrades in Chrome comes at no additional cost, lifetime warrant. Read full story. Thanks for reading MXTM's newsletter. Subscribe for free to receive new posts and support my work. Absolutely. Here's your Substack note plus X post with crisp hashtags. Redeemer Plus goes global. When the legions judged the Earth a spiritual IMF for the spike-damaged century, corporations and governments now face karmic audits, not just economic ones, and Mexico's youth are leading the charge with soul tech and rats, restorative action tokens. Judgment Day is now a push notification. X post. Redeemer Plus just dropped. The world's first spiritual audit engine for governments and core is live. Karmic debt bombs. Rats instead of ESGs. Mexico leads the ethical uprising. Judgment Day is now a push notification. Hashtag MXTM, hashtag Redeemer, hashtag Restorative Justice, hashtag Post-Spike World, hashtag Spiritual Tech, hashtag Karmic Debt, hashtag Decentralized Audit, hashtag Future Mexico, hashtag AGI, hashtag Ethical AI, hashtag Ancestral Tech, hashtag Improbable News, hashtag IMF Reboot, hashtag DMSO, hashtag Spikeopathy, hashtag Karmic Protocol, hashtag Substack. Absolutely. Here's the Substack note title plus a ready-to-post X thread and hashtag string. How Big Mama draws circumscriptions and leaves you a way out. In the age of narrative governance, borders aren't walls, they're plot devices. Circumscriptions are narrative traps. But the way out is part of the script. If you can read between the code, satellites that see corporate damage in real time, smart contracts that enforce remediation without regulators, distributed audit networks producing court-admissible evidence. Redeemer Plus Planetary deployment is the integration layer. The liability is already documented. The architecture is already in motion. Subscribe. Hashtag REDEEMR plus hashtag Planetary Audit, hashtag Autonomous Accountability, hashtag AGI Governance, hashtag Institutional Forensics, hashtag Grand Mayan Aquifer, hashtag Restorative Action Tokens, hashtag Distributed Audit, hashtag Sovereign Enforcement, hashtag Programmable Justice, hashtag Natural Capital Accounting, hashtag Ecological Liability, hashtag Indigenous Sovereignty, hashtag Smart Contract Justice, hashtag Planetary Boundaries, hashtag Quadratic Accountability, hashtag Post-Institutional, hashtag Sovereign Doctrine, hashtag Pirate First, hashtag Extraction
Deployment.
Discussion about
The Earth is now auditable.
Redeemer Plus Prevention Module. 3 hours ago, MXTMAK Pirate Redeemer v.1.0 System Introduction. 18 hours ago, Redeemer v.13.0 Skip Trace Module. June 17th. Survival Blueprints for AI-Displaced Professionals. From Prototype to Global Pattern. June 17th MXTM Reality Under Siege. June 16th MXTM State of the Art in Neuromedicine. June 15th
Annexe, le district de transition post-corporatif.
June 8th
REDEEMR, Skip Trace Module, Autonomous Forensic Architecture, for the post-institutional era.
The 1% First Campus emerges where the Green School dream died.
A hidden longevity civilization beneath the Grand Mayan Aquifer seeds, a successor species engineered for extreme worlds. On a hostile exoplanet, that species survives by abandoning fragile technology and building an analog, pressure-driven civilization forcing humanity to confront a choice: evolve into new forms or accept obsolescence. Super Earth Age of the Apes. A series by Pirate First for MXTM Foglix. Production and distribution. They didn't leave Earth. They withdrew beneath it. Inside the flooded arteries of the Grand Mayan Aquifer, a quiet civilization learns something the surface world forgot. Survival isn't about more energy, it's about better constraints. No grids, no noise, no spectacle, only pressure, flow, time. Hydrogen separate not by fire, but by depth. Life extended not by miracles, but by patience. The city that did not grow it stabilized. And when the surface drowned in its own abundance, they made a decision that still echoes. If humanity cannot evolve, it will be redesigned. The project they never announced. No rockets and headlines. No billionaires live streaming countdowns. Just a silent launch. A ship carrying. No passengers, no heroes, No founders. Only embryos. And a mind. A system trained away from chaos. A custodian intelligence that would later be called simply Mother. Destination Proxima Centauri B. A world where gravity presses harder than ambition, solar flares erase fragile progress, electronics fail like promises. A world designed to reject us. Perfect. What arrived was not human.
Beneath the surface, we engineered tomorrow. Above the world, we chose not to return.
Super Earth. Age of the Apes. The negotiated ascent. Super Earth. Age of the Apes.
REDEEMR,
V1.0, Autonomous Capital Redirection Infrastructure for the post-philanthropic era.
REDEEMR V.1.0 System Introduction. Autonomous Capital Redirection Infrastructure for the Post-Philanthropic Era. Capability Disclosure. Sovereign Distribution Channel, June 2025, Riviera Maya Node. The problem is not scarcity. The problem is that the allocation systems are broken, and the entities that broke them are the same ones authorized to fix them. This is not an app announcement. It is a structural argument with a deployment layer attached.
Now conquer your own deep shadow. Become the god you always pretended not to be. Save actual people exactly like it is an early-stage startup. REDEEMR, make a god again. The first redemption as a service platform where billionaires play savior at scale. Because if you can't fix yourself, fix the world instead. Slide 2. The problem. Rich people are miserable. 68% of ultra-high net worth individuals report existential fatigue. Philanthropy feels slow, old, and smells like paper checks. Good press does not equal good conscience. They are buying Mars plots instead of meaning. There is no Uber for redemption, until now. Leaving a multi-generational legacy is now infinitely more valuable than acquiring another vehicle or Lambo. The global ultra-rich are actively hunting for new paradigms of post-capitalist prestige.
Continue at current rates. Sovereign argument. Wealth concentration is not an accident. It is the emergent output of a system designed to compound advantage. Philanthropy, as currently architected, is that system's pressure valve, enough redistribution to prevent rupture, structured to ensure the allocation decisions remain with the concentrators. Autonomous AI changes the calculus. For the first time, impact-optimized capital allocation does not require institutional intermediation. The matching problem that foundation program officers nominally solve, which need, which intervention, which community, can now be solved with greater speed, lower overhead, and higher evidence fidelity by algorithmic systems trained on the complete body of rigorous development economics research. REDEEMR is not a charity platform. It is the infrastructure that makes charity platforms obsolete, issued under the Pirate First Sovereign Doctrine. Capital is not virtue. Allocation is.
Reality Under Siege, a field guide to cognitive security.